Welcome back to the Tailosive Tech Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We have a full panel for you today. Okay, Mike, what kind of gauntlet are you wearing right now?
You should have gone for the M2 Air.
Oh my god. Where did they go? Mike? What just happened?
No longer. This is the reign of you and me, Drew. No more Randy or Nick. It's just me and you now.
Okay, luckily macOS has Time Machine. So
No!
we should be able to get the gems back, and we'll reverse all this.
Does this mean I get a really cool scimitar?
Yeah.
I guess Movie Reviews has invaded Talos of Tech. Hello, everyone.
How are we gonna check in with Randy's AirPods 3 experience now that he's turned to dust?
We could try putting the dust back together, but I think it's fruitless. You should have gone for the Air, but whatever.
Randy is not very repairable. He doesn't support right to repair.
I guess what it sounds like, from what I've heard, it was great that Nick did not go for the M2 MacBook Pro. From what many reports say, that it is definitely it's struggling for, I guess, finding its audience.
Everyone's saying, why does it exist? I think, especially the base model in particular, is not worth it, because that's where it seems all of the SSD read and write speeds are struggling. But I'm personally fine with the idea of Apple making it for the sake of they know people will buy it. Like, from a business perspective, I get it, because they know that Pro term, it's older than the iPhone. Like, the first MacBook Pro came out in 2006. Like, it's a very iconic. Some people just accommodate that term Pro with MacBook to the point now, if they see any kind of Apple laptop, they'll just say, oh, that's a MacBook Pro. It goes with the name so well that there's this mental barrier when people are like, oh, what MacBook should I get? Oh, that's the Air, that's the Pro. Oh, Pro. Oh, that one's bigger. It must be faster. It must be better. And there are people out there that don't actually utilize the performance, that don't even realize that the two laptops are using the same chips. And now even more so, Apple is proving the Air actually has better stuff. It has better ports. It has better display, better webcam, better speaker. It has all these improvements. That doesn't even matter, because some people are like, yeah, but it's not a Pro, though. That's the Pro. It has a fan. That means it's fast. So for the sake of... I had this conversation with someone in Discord the other day, but they were saying that in their line of work, in their business, they're just trained for buying laptops in bulk for their employees to just get the Pro model, because that's what the business has always ordered. They're used to Pros. Doesn't matter that the Air can do better or for cheaper or has the same ports or the same... None of that matters. It's just, no, we buy the Pro model because that's what we're professionals. We're a business, so we got to buy the Pros. So from a financial perspective, I get why they released it, but I absolutely would not recommend it to anybody. I cannot think of a single use case where I'd say, no, you should get this one. It's like, I think the Air is plenty fast and cheaper and better now. And the fan doesn't make as big a difference as people think it does, especially if you're buying a base model. You're probably not that much of a performance junkie. If you really need that extra performance in those higher loads, you're going to buy the 14-inch, 16-inch Pros. So, yeah, I get the public's reaction, essentially. It makes sense as to why everyone's like, why does this exist? It's like, yeah, it really shouldn't, but people buy it, so they're going to sell it.
I think it's a great option for those that love the old design or loved the touch bar, and they still want that, and the M2 still delivers some performance increase, at least from what Apple showed during their event. But doing this, I guess, the manufacturing smart route of reusing all the parts is easy on Apple, easy on many different ways to deliver this product to customers without having any supply chain issues necessarily. It was great. Right. But there is the detriment that everyone else is pointing out that I think in some ways they're very far out left field edge cases of like no normal user that is buying a 13-inch MacBook Pro is going to be trying this specific or taking the machine to this specific avenue. They're going to be doing normal. I mean, I could see I would never buy one, but if I did buy one, I think I would be perfectly fine with it replacing my M1 or M1, my M1 iMac. Even though
you could do all the same stuff,
half the size, and
yeah,
it's just got a new chip or whatever. I'd still think it'd perform fine, and I'd have the portability or I can't say portability.
Some
portability option.
Yeah.
Yes, some of that. Which I don't really need that. As you guys can tell, I don't really go far. I just go to work and back. So I don't really need my computer to come with me. And even so, I couldn't even use my computer at work. So an iMac is perfectly fine for me. But getting back to the MacBook Pro, I think it's great to have a 13-inch option for those who like that shape and form factor. But if you're expecting the first M2 product to be like the next generation that is going to make the M1 Pro and Max chips weep, then I think your expectations were set too high.
I agree. I think there was way too much hype for the M2 chip. People thought that had to be this like massive, major step change, and in reality, it's like, no, just compare it to like iPhone chip upgrades. You know, A13 to A14, A14 to A. It's like, okay, it's a little bit faster, but in day-to-day use, it's not. And I also don't think most people buying, because I know that all the comparisons were showing, like, here's the M1 MacBook Pro in this one specific tasks where we have all these tabs open, and then we overclock, not overclock, but run up the CPU as high as we can, and then compare that to the M2 MacBook Pro doing the same thing, and it's slower. It's like, I don't think there were that many people buying an M1 MacBook Pro and now buying the M2 MacBook Pro. It's like, year-over-year upgrades for MacBooks are pretty rare. It's a bit more common in the iPhone space, but I feel like most people buying Macs buy them and then hold them for a few years. So most people, I think, buying the M2 MacBook Pro are likely coming from an Intel MacBook or older, or, an Air from 2017 or a Pro from 2015. They're coming from something much slower than the M1. And if the M1 and the base storage matters to you and you're actually caring about saving $1 and you like the old design in the touch bar, certified refurbished. You could get M1 MacBook Pros for several $100 cheaper than $1,300. So if that's your concern, the M1 MacBook Pro isn't gone. You can still buy it now at a discount, and it's been out for a while, so it's easy to find sales. So I totally get why Apple did it, because it simplified manufacturing to have just the one NAND. Thanos snapped the other NAND away, so they cut it in half.
I don't know where my glove went.
Your chips, they're gone. Half of the NANDs are gone. But
Supply
the people that are buying that, the people buying that base model will not max that out the way the comparisons are doing. So I think people are making it out to be a little bit of a bigger issue than it really is. But I guess there's more shared concern now for the M2 MacBook Air, because people are like, well, the Air doesn't have fans, so does that mean the M2 and the Air is going to throttle more and not perform as great, or that read and writes won't be as good as the M1 MacBook Air was? It's a compromise potentially, but I get the impression that in most use cases the M2 will still be faster. There will be a handful of cases where it's not, but specifically that base option is like, okay, people are just buying the cheapest MacBook Air they can. I don't think those are the people that max out the read and write speeds, and it's like you have 256 gigs on board. You can't be moving that much because you only have so much data to move back and forth, so the amount of time it takes. But the reason I guess I don't care as much is you're getting so many other upgrades with the new Air. You're getting a bigger display, you're getting a new webcam, you're getting better ports, you're getting the new design. It's like, those are things people, I think, will notice and appreciate a lot more than read and write speed. So even if it is a compromise, and to get the new design, you have to take a little bit of a hit in certain use cases of performance, most would probably take the hit for the sake of the new design. And if you don't want to take the hit, spend an extra $200, get the 512 gig, and you're good. You're back to normal.
Yeah,
maybe
or just keep with your current hardware. Maybe you don't really need that upgrade then. If you're seeing that the M1, the better M1 in this case, is too much for your wallet, and this one isn't performing the way you want, then I mean, Apple is iterating step by step every chip at this point, that eventually
Yes.
they'll get to some level where you're at the perfect price bracket for your wallet, but it also performs the way that you want. And I think the M2 is going to be kind of like that S-Year for iPhones, but what it'll be for the M1. It's just going to be a little bit faster. It's going to have a little bit more capability. They're going to be able to go a little bit more beyond in some ways and maybe not in other ways. Or they'll at least cover the basis of what M1 did, and they'll just do something, one thing a little bit better. This is the beginning of M2. Expecting everything out of the beginning of it is a little bit... I guess what I'm trying to say is have some patience, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure the M2 is going to be great, but expecting everything out of this 13-inch MacBook Pro, set your expectations in the right spot.
They're even reusing the box.
No.
The boxes are the same.
Right? Like, you're getting the same box that you got, was it 2 or 3 years ago or something like that?
Almost 2, yeah.
Yeah. Just...
It's exactly what it appears to be. As my wife said on the trip we just took, expect the expected.
That's a great way to put it. It's not going to be a Cybertruck.
It's a recycled design. That's exactly what it is. Don't look further into it. I think maybe there were too many channels or too many people think, oh, but maybe under the hood they redesigned. No, it's exactly what it looks like. It's a repackaged MacBook Pro. They took out the M1, they popped in the M2, they called it a day. Don't look more into it than that.
This is a F-150 Lightning than compared to a Cybertruck, right? This isn't a giant redesign. This is just take out...
Marquez's video should be retitled to "The F-150 Lightning is the M2 MacBook Pro of pickup."
Just wait for the the Ranger Lightning in that case then.
Wait for the Ranger.
Because that's the
I saw some people bringing up something that I was curious about. Like, do you think Apple should disclose on the website when the read and write speeds are going to be slower, or like this chip is not going to perform as well? No.
I don't think so.
I'm curious because I was torn on this.
I think they're fine because they already, day one, they showed all the specs. They showed, here's what it can do. And it seems like, from what I've observed, I haven't really been following it as much as others, but what I've seen is that it still does all the things that you need it to do and all the performance that you want. But to overclock it or like try to bring it to the edges of the boundary that you think the M2 chip can go with the limited hardware that it already has right now, I don't think it's really a problem with Apple. I don't think they need to disclose that. I think it's more of, if you are into pro, I guess, if you are one of those pro users that cares about every single thing inside your Mac, and yet all you're doing is like Final Cut Pro or like other things, and you're not really doing like 10 projects at the same time, I don't think Apple has any responsibility to say, oh yeah, this one's missing this, or you might see some issues when you do this with it. Like,
yeah, it would be a great selling point, would it?
Yeah, that would only deter people from buying it more. And already, I don't think people are buying this as much.
If you go on YouTube, everyone says, don't buy it. No, everyone's already saying,
exactly,
don't buy this, don't buy this.
So even so, people already know. And Apple usually lets, or at least they don't do that much advertising in like the specific nitty gritty of their products. They usually let the tech YouTubers dive into it and tell you whether it's good or bad. And Apple doesn't really care. They get revenue no matter what, whether people are ordering it or sending it back. They get some money back. So, no, I don't think there's a responsibility. Do you think that the Apple Corporation should disclose this?
I was thinking about it because I know people care about transparency, and Apple got in a lot of trouble when they were throttling iPhone CPUs to preserve battery life. The issue was not that they were throttling, if you recall the court case. It was that they weren't disclosing that they were throttling. So they wouldn't have gotten sued if they would have said what they were doing. Um, and that's where the troubles began. So I'm wondering if they could potentially have another lawsuit on their hands, or if it's a bad idea to not disclose those types of things. But I think there's a way. I guess I'll disagree a little bit and say there's probably a way they could have handled it to not make it sound like a bad thing. Like, it's all perspective, right? It's not that the 256 gig is slower. You should just say that the 512 and up is faster. Like, advertise that if you opt for more storage and spend a little bit extra money, you'll get to more properly utilize virtual memory swap, and the read and write speeds will be improved. I think you could have added a little fine print maybe in the configurator. The edge cases they're pushing it to, I don't think are honestly that common. I don't think that many people will run into them, but if there was a chart somewhere, I need to go back and watch the event maybe, but I don't know if there was a chart somewhere where they said the M2 objectively has faster read and write speeds than the M1. From what I recall, I don't think they said that. I think they mostly just talked about the CPU being better performing and the GPU is higher performing. They didn't talk about thermal throttling or the cooling being worse. So I think Apple's mindset of it was kind of like, don't ask, don't tell. Like, if it's not better than the M1 at something, we're just not going to mention it. But yeah. I don't know if legally or morally that means they should have to. If they made any kind of compromise in any aspect of the product, they need to bring it up. They kind of glossed over it in the past, when they removed the touch bar, or when they got rid of 3D touch on the iPhones. They barely drew attention to it. They basically just said, it's haptic touch now instead of 3D touch. I think Phil Schiller, when they announced the 10R, made one little side comment. He was like, well, now it doesn't have 3D touch, but it allows for this new thing called haptic touch. And then following year, yeah, which is better because it costs less for us to build. Basically. No, that's not what he said.
Well,
but
yeah, layman's.
The following year, they scrapped 3D touch on the OLED iPhones. So none of the 11s had it, Pro or regular. And they didn't really say anything about it. They didn't say, like, this we removed. They just said it has haptic touch, which is the same as the iPhone XR, which we also mentioned. So, I'm a little bit vague on whether or not they should objectively come forward and say, this is slower. Look, everyone.
No.
Should they?
That's not good
probably
advertising.
Wouldn't.
Apple's all about advertising and marketing things to the way that looks best on the product. To go out their way to say, you might see bad things in these areas. That's not good. No, they want to frame this thing in the best possible light. And
if you want Apple to be transparent and talk about how something is slower, your expectations are unrealistic for a $1 trillion company.
Very true. They're trying to make money. That's their thing. And if there are some changes that result in detrimental use cases for the computer, I think that's where YouTubers excel or articles excel. Yes. Because
we're not. Some of us are not paid sponsors.
No, but at least that's where you get more of the story, because Apple's there to present it. They're not there to
They show the best of the best.
Yeah, they're not supposed to explain everything about it. Like,
this is why this one sucks.
Yeah, they're not going to show you all the bad. That doesn't make sense as a company, because they're a company. Their lifeblood is money, and they're going to want to get as much money as possible. So they want to sell this in the best light possible so that they get the biggest bang for their buck this year on this product. Mm-hmm. If that means, we get into this kind of morally gray area where they could have said something and they didn't, it is a bummer. It seems a little bit like you're cheated in a way, because now you can't do more with this thing, and actually you do a little bit less because you're held back by the hardware. And there's not really much you can do unless you want to do a complete chassis change or add some components that will make it a little bit more of a smoother experience in that regard. Mm-hmm. But people who are buying this thing, I would think if they're trying to go for something pro, just go for the 14?
The nice thing about the 14 inches, they're coming down in price and other sites because they've been out for a while. So you can get it for under $2,000, and you can find them.
If you're that upset, upgrade to that. If you don't think that it's going to upset you that much, or you think you could live with it, go for the 13. Enjoy the new M2 product. But
I just say still go for the Air. I didn't recommend anybody get the M1 MacBook Pro. I thought that wasn't worth it. Now people are even more doubling down on it because the M2 seems to have these thermal limitations, and specifically with the base model, the read and write limitations. So I'm just like, even more so reason. I wasn't up, even if they didn't compromise and the M2 was better in every single metric, I still wouldn't have recommended it.
Sure.
So that's why I guess it's not a big deal for me. But Apple, I think maybe it would have been a good idea to advertise that the higher storage configurations get better read and write, and pitch it as a positive instead of a drawback. Is like,
yeah,
256 gigs is great, but this does even more. And
512 will be able to do this, and you can put more photos on it, because we know that you love taking photos on your your selfie cam or whatever, the built-in camera on the 13.
With the crappy webcam.
Yeah, the 720p or is it 720p? I think
the Pro is still 720. Yeah. The Air got the 1080p, which is funny to me that the Air has better ports and a better camera and a better display than the Pro. It's all naming. That's really all it is. It's just the name. Doesn't really matter how bad of a laptop it is, as long as they put Pro at the end and the price is not as crazy high. It's also something, I don't know if you saw what Marquez tweeted, called the decoy effect. Have you heard of that?
I have not heard of the decoy effect.
He said this is probably what the M2 MacBook Pro is doing. It's a marketing tactic, also referred to as the attraction effect or asymmetric dominance effect.
I see.
So consumers will tend to have a specific change in preference between two options when also presented with a third option that is asymmetrically dominated. So basically the job of that MacBook Pro is to make the MacBook Air look really good.
Yeah, or convince people to go for the old MacBook Pro with the M1 chip in it.
Oh, that too. See, that's kind of the genius of it, because for one, there's a bunch of companies that are just trained to buy the cheapest MacBook Pro, and because they're stupid and they don't know that the Air can do the same thing, they don't get the Air because that sounds too cheap and basic, and that's not up for our workflows. So enterprise will buy a bunch of them, and there will also be a bunch of people that are just convinced, well, because it has the word Pro, that must mean it's better, so they buy that. And Apple gets to reuse and recycle basically 99% of the components and simplify manufacturing. And for three, even if no one buys it, it makes the MacBook Air sound like a great deal, because now, on one hand, you had a bunch of people say, oh, the MacBook Air got a little bit more expensive. That kind of sucks, but you get all these new design changes, and it looks all clean and new, and it has thinner bezels, and it's got the great camera. You would only, if there was just the MacBook Air, we'd probably only talk about it for like a week or two. But now that they've launched the M2 MacBook Pro and everyone's complaining about it, it's turned this whole controversy into this like month-long news cycle where everyone for a month now is just saying, get the Air, and we keep we are like free advertisement for Apple boasting about how great the MacBook Air is using the decoy effect. So I think it's probably a combination of all those things. I don't think the sole reason they made it was just to make the MacBook Air look more attractive, but I bet it may have played a role in it, of like, there's a lot of financial benefits to releasing this MacBook, even though I don't think anyone should get it.
I could see some of those conversations going on with the engineering and marketing team, or leadership team in general, just seeing how like this isn't really a big jump, but we can bring that new look to the Air, and everyone will be like, ooh, it looks shiny and new, and it doesn't really have this issue. And yeah, I guess people understand that it's not a Pro, but it's got all these great things with it. It's definitely, I was looking at the color options. It is the Starlight Golden Child at this point, the M2 MacBook Air. And it's definitely, it'll be talked about for at least a month straight, because it'll be like, look how it compares to this. It's better in this way. Even though
I'm excited.
Apple advertises.
I'm going to review it. I'll compare it to my MacBook. See how it. I don't expect it to beat it, obviously, but just to see like how close it gets. I'm curious.
Sure. I just find it funny how they they market the M2 chip on the site directly below, since I was looking through this a little bit. And they say it's an 8-core CPU that lets you zip through everyday tasks like creating documents and presentations, or taking on more intensive workflows like developing an Xcode or mixing tracks in Logic Pro. None of that really seems like you're taking it to the extreme at all.
You're right. You're very right. They're advertising how great it is at Word,
Yeah. Not without even
This has a browser.
Whoa.
It's amazing.
This is like 2022, and they're like, this chip slaps M2 chip. This puppy can get you through a presentation in no time.
This thing can write so many text documents. You have no idea. No, I mean, that's what it is. I feel like a ton of people buy Macs that are not really doing that much power-intensive work. So,
look at me. I have an M1 iMac. Am I taking it to the extreme of desktop computers? No. Do I want a studio? Yes. Is there a refurbished one now on Certified Refurbished and I really want it? Yes.
Oh, I saw that.
Do I need it? No.
What are they going for? I didn't check.
This one, there's only one that I see on the site right now. It's a $200 savings of like $1,800 versus $2,000.
Wow, $1,800.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
You
for an M1 Max chip for $1,800.
And it's the one that I was looking at. I mean, they even have it configurable, so you can either get the 512. Oh wait, no, they can't. Never mind. They just that's an artifact. It is a 512. I would probably go for like a 1 or 2 terabyte, but if they get more inventory of that studio at a $200 to $500 price reduction, and I can
that's a great deal. Oh
I can get for one.
Yeah, because the M1 Max is 512 gig minimum. So
yeah, in which the storage I've got in here is 1 terabyte. So if I can get that with 1 terabyte for $500 or $200 less,
yeah,
it's very tempting.
Apple Card 3% back.
It'd be pretty neat. But
try to beat that custom PC builds for $1,800.
But I guess
for that many Thunderbolt ports.
Yeah, I guess going back to the M2 chip.
Oh yeah,
I think I don't know. We're just at the beginning, and even so, Apple's saying this puppy can do presentations really well and all that. Like, at the end of the day, this serves as a very nice, humble reminder that Apple can make some really cool stuff, but they're still limited in many different ways. There's many different variables at play. They're not.
Everyone's limited too.
Yeah,
the chip shortage. Yeah.
But like their chips aren't like this X element X or whatever that is able to do whatever you want. Like you can pop this thing into whatever and it does everything. Like, yeah, I can't game, but it does everything else amazing. Like, no, there's still limitations. This chip is still grounded in reality.
Yes, and it works with the same physics as Qualcomm and all other ARM systems. But I do think that Apple's able to optimize their chips the best for the hardware. Mm-hmm. I don't see that as commonly in the competition of building silicon. They usually have to build it for hundreds of different machines and try to optimize it for all of these different companies that are going to build laptops and desktops. And that's why like Apple's battery life is unmatched, is because they can get the exact thermal envelope down. And they figure out how much power this chip needs, and they know their chip is going in 2 to 3 machines, not 100. So they know exactly how to build it and how to optimize it for that. And boy, on my trip last week, sorry there was no show last week, did I utilize this MacBook Pro to the max. I normally am just here on my desk with it plugged in, but I needed the battery life on this trip because where we were staying in a very small room because Hawaii's expensive, and we're trying to be conscious of we don't just blow all our money on hotels and stuff or rental cars. So we were staying with a friend, but we basically did not have like any power outlets near our bed, air mattress, and only one outlet to access in like the kitchen area because this was like a studio. It was not like an apartment or anything. So when I was editing, there wasn't much counter space. I had to go off of battery power and just use my MacBook for filming and editing and everything. just using it like on the couch or at the dinner table, and I was able to make 3 4K at 60 videos on one charge and still have, I think it was like 40% battery left.
Wow.
And because I only had that one outlet, I would use it at night to charge like my phone and watch and stuff. I needed to fast charge because it was like, okay, I'm going to film some videos now and I'm going to edit them afterwards, but I'm going to unplug because my wife is charging too. She's got a watch and phone. So I unplug our chargers to plug in the MacBook, and I'm like, it's just going to charge while I'm filming, but then I'm going to have to unplug it again once I start editing. And that was the first time I actually properly utilized the fast charging capability of the MacBook, which was awesome. It's a big 140-watt brick that gets really, really hot, but the MacBook, because we were watching movies on it and stuff at the airport and at the apartment, we were using it for general media consumption and work. It was at like 18%. And I started filming, I plugged it in, and I recorded a few videos and then stopped, and then it was at like 75-80% when I was done recording.
Wow, that's a supercharger.
Yeah, it's the Apple supercharger. My only complaint is they only have one USB-C port on the brick. Now they're starting to make 35-watt bricks with 2, but 140 watts just gets 1.
That is the Apple way. But that's how they work, right? Like something that's not logical. Like, oh yeah, this has more capacity to charge multiple products, but we're not going to give it to that. We're going to give it to the one that's severely limited, so that you only get like 15 watts or whatever. Right. Not even kilowatts or whatever. Nothing close to that.
I don't get it at all, but I was utilizing the battery life to the best of its ability, and the fast charging, which I never really used or cared about. Now on this trip, I was like, oh, good. And I did not take this on the trip. It's been sitting here the whole time.
I'm surprised there's not enough dust on it. It looks very clean. How dare you not allow more dust to go on it?
So I know I can now indefinitely work without the iPad. My wife's iPad is sitting right next to it. She doesn't use hers. So it's sad, but although I think Mike got some use out of
yeah, I was going to say I was the opposite. I thrived on the Mini every chance I could. Every time I was kind of like Drew, I was traveling as well, but just for yes, the Think meme. But
I wore the shirt.
Oh, nice! There we go.
So it matches.
Fun fact about that, I guess, to give a little bit of history on that. I started working on that probably I think 2 months ago, and just because everything that's been going on in my life, I just didn't really get to it, and I would you can tell it's dated because you can look at the background and compare it to your new redesigned background, Drew. And like
I changed the whole background to date your
basically because what I did is I looked at your videos. I'm like, okay, we're gonna put this here. Like I put so much attention to detail, like where the red iPhone was sitting in its white box, and then where this black iPhone was, and all that.
What app did you use?
I just used Sketchbook or whatever.
Sketchbook. No, it was really cool.
It's pretty funny because like you'd probably use like a really big iPad, like your 11 or 12 inch. Oh, this is very low on charge. You'd want to use like maybe some big tablet for drawing, but honestly, like this isn't a bad drawing area, and especially for like going on a trip. Like I can't really put it in my pocket easily and take it out on a plane because there's already not enough room on a plane. But it's small enough to where I felt comfortable bringing it along because it could fit. I brought my drone with me. Drew, you went to Hawaii. I went to Seattle. And apparently I had hotter weather than you in Seattle than you had in Hawaii. But I brought my drone, and I was going to get some cool shots of Mount Rainier and all that. And I thought, I'll take the iPad too to tide the time over in the terminals and all that. And it fits perfectly in the little drone bag. And the drone it's a DJI Mavic Mini 2 or whatever. Like it's the small one. So the mini iPad went with the mini drone in my mini.
That's awesome.
In the mini bag, and I just needed a mini iPhone and all that.
iPad Mini's great. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. But I had a fun time with the iPad. I think it's a great drawing tablet. I'm probably going to do more with it whenever I get more time. It sounds like I'm going to have a lot of time in the coming weeks to do some more doodling and all that. And I think it's a fantastic drawing thing or like taking notes. But kind of coming to the same conclusion that we have in the past on the podcast here is that the iPad is not it's not a pro device. Going back to the term pro. However you want to define pro, I don't think the iPad fits that definition, or at least the thought that everyone thinks of with a pro device, where it's able to do all these different things. And it is, but like it's very severely limited in all those things that it claims it can do. So
yeah,
for the things that I use it for, it's perfect. I love it.
I think drawing and note taking and stuff is its best use case right now, because that's something you can't do on an iPhone or a Mac. Whereas everything I was using the iPad for, now I use my iPhone or Mac for. So the subject lift or the video editing. And so I don't do much doodling or note taking. So I guess that's why I have struggled to find use for it, and why on a trip I'm okay not taking it with me.
It's a giant tablet that you have to cart around everywhere and find room for it. Even though, yeah, it's slim, it's still wide.
It is. And where our bags were packed, we try to pack as light as we can. So we didn't have any suitcases. We were just had 2 backpacks on the whole trip. So all our clothes and everything, and fit the MacBook in there. And, you know, considering how big the display is, it's honestly fairly compact that it can slide in the most backpacks and stuff. So
for how chunky this new design is, yeah.
Mike showed off the capabilities of iPad Mini with the. We'll probably make it the thumbnail of this episode, so they'll see it.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
It's a great device. I love it. But yeah, getting back to it, it would be interesting to see new things come with the M2 chip. Whether they put it in the iPad and do something new and cool with it, or if it gets the same treatment that the MacBook Pro got recently, where it's like, this is a very tiny incremental increase with no discernible improvements, and actually a lot more discernible cons or detriments to it. So, I don't know.
After seeing the Stage Manager thing and then restrict that to the M1, I'm now convinced like they're probably going to keep going with this. They might come up with some other random feature that they're like, you need the M2 chip for the iPad Pro to be able to handle this. And
we put the M2 chip in the pencil. Did you hear me?
Right.
The M2 chip is in the pencils. It does things.
There's a chip shortage. It's easier for us to just use the same chip in the MacBook as the pencil. It's the same thing. It powers it. It's
put in the MacBook Pro, put it in the iPads. We don't need the M2 chip in there. Just go the complete opposite direction.
People are worried about thermal throttling with the M2. Imagine what it's going to be like with the imagine what it's going to be like in the iPad, even thinner, no fan, smaller battery than the Air.
Convection.
That's going to be
that'll be the best way to cool it down, because it's so thin. You're able to just release all the air.
It's got magnets. Just slap it to the fridge.
I think honestly, putting a magnet on like the Mini is a really good idea, because
it already has some, right?
Well, yeah, it's got some on the side right there, but and I guess some on the back as well. Yeah, for the smart case or whatever.
Right.
But I think putting a MagSafe isn't necessarily a terrible idea on this size of an iPad, because it's already your Max is getting close to this Mini.
Yeah, it is. No, it's very close.
How huge it is, and so.
After trying the iPad Mini, it convinced me that I wanted big iPhones. Like, I could live with an 8.3-inch iPhone and just bring all the iPhone hardware over to the Mini. Give it 120 hertz, give it the triple camera, leave USB-C. That's fine, but give it the wireless charging and all that, and Apple Watch support. Still call it an iPhone. Just call it iPhone Ultra now that Ultra is a term Apple's comfortable using. But I used my phone quite a bit for underwater when I was snorkeling. And
you are not afraid of taking your phone underwater from, what was it? Not Jamaica, but
Puerto Rico.
From Puerto Rico to Hawaii, you are submerging this brick, and
it's fine.
It's surviving.
It can take it.
Wow.
It's a little bit of a mental, what's it called? A heart wrench, because it will temporarily limit your speaker quality quite a bit. And it will probably scare you the first time and you'll think you broke it, but I'm not going to say you should do it because I don't want to be responsible for people breaking their phones. But all I'll say is what happened in my experience, which is when we went swimming in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico and stuff, we took the phone in salt water with sand everywhere, filmed probably 15, 20 feet deep. I went very deep in Puerto Rico and came out. The speakers were rattly and crackly, and they'll stay rattly and crackly for about 2 or 3 days, and it just sounds broken. And at first, I just accepted I broke my phone. Oh well, the memories will last forever. The phone is temporary, but a few days go by, and because the speakers were broken, I kept filming underwater. And at one point, I pulled it out of the water, and the speakers were back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure either like salt or sand can just kind of get stuck in there when it's wet, and then as it dries out, it'll eventually dislodge itself.
Mm-hmm.
But this time in Hawaii, I didn't even run it underwater again. I didn't go as deep. There weren't really that many places I could swim where we were at that were like 20 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
But I was swimming in probably 10 or 9 feet deep of ocean and filming the fish, and came out, speakers were rattly, and I just ignored it, and I just figured it'll probably fix itself. And 2 or 3 days later, it started slowly sounding normal, and now it sounds just as good as it did on launch day. So they're pretty dang water resistant. I know they don't recommend it in salt water, and it's rated for 6 meters for 30 minutes, but they just get really good footage that you can watch right there on the big screen. The people we were staying with had a GoPro 10, I think, the black edition.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Here, film this," and it's I'm sure it's a better camera. It can film at like 5K and has a wider angle and probably a larger sensor and stuff. But I filmed with the GoPro, but once you're done filming, you have like this tiny, tiny screen to watch it back on, and you can't really get a good view of what you've seen until you connect your phone to the GoPro or take the micro SD card out, and all that. Whereas the iPhone, like as soon as you're done recording, like I would film underwater, come to the surface, and then I can watch it right there on like a big, bright 6.7-inch display. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh yeah, look, I caught the little fish here, and I could see him swimming around. It's nice to just have that viewing area right there, and I can airdrop it straight off. Oh, it will prevent you from charging wired for a few hours. So
good. Smart software engineering on Apple's front.
Yeah, I plugged it in, and it says moisture detected in the lightning port. But there's a button that says emergency override. So you can...
Interesting.
I've never done it because I use MagSafe anyway, so I don't really need... There were a few times on this trip because I didn't have a charger near my bed that I needed to fast charge my phone. Mm-hmm. So I would plug it in and top it off really quick, and there was a few times where I was like, oh, it's wet, I can't fast charge it, so I had to MagSafe. But I'm just glad there's another charging method to fall back on when the lightning port is wet.
Yeah, having that flexibility is nice, and that's something that I found on my trip as well with the 11. I wasn't or 11 Pro. I wasn't submerging it like you everywhere. In fact, I was doing the opposite. I was taking picture of submerged things at a zoo and a bunch of other places that I went to. I was taking a bunch of photos, and
that's cool.
Halfway through the day, not even halfway through the day, like I took the phone off the charger at like 9:30, and I didn't take like a crazy amount of pictures, but like enough to where like around 2:00 the phone was at like 30% battery, and it's not like I've got the phone on the whole time. It's like, at least when I was at the zoo, it was like, take picture of animal, take another picture of animal, maybe take a video. All right, put it in my pocket, walk to the next exhibit, which takes about maybe 45 seconds or a minute to the next one. Take one photo, take a few photos, maybe take a video. Like it's not like I'm taxing this thing, or I don't have like a 4K at 60 footage going on the whole entire time.
Sure.
And this thing was draining through battery quicker than, I don't know, someone sucking on a lemonade on a very hot day, which I was doing because it was 88 degrees in Seattle, Tacoma.
Right. Yeah.
Are you getting it?
I guess you're...
It's not supposed to be that hot.
Yeah, I guess everywhere's getting hot. We were grateful where we were in Hawaii. It was like 70 to 80 most days. And back home at our house, I was checking the weather app, which the iPhone has, thank God. And it was where we live at home. It was like over 100 every day for like a week. And we were like, oh, thank God. And then right as we got back, it's starting to cool down again. So I'm very grateful that we were away. We probably saved a fortune on air conditioning just by not being home for that.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, your battery's probably getting up there with age. It's almost 3 years old now, right?
Yeah. I guess for those that are interested, the battery health app, or I guess readout. What am I trying to say? Basically, Apple's telling me on the battery health that it's at 77%. And I got this phone in January of 2020. Like, I think January 5th of 2020 is when I got it. So it's not like
past the 2-year mark.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
It's not a day one
typical
version of the phone. It had a few months for people to buy it. And then this was whatever VIN number. They don't do VIN numbers for phones. What am I thinking? Anyways,
don't say VIN number. It's redundancy.
Number. Yeah, I guess so. Now you got me tripped up on that. But I guess what I'm getting at is the 11 is showing its age for what I use it for, and I use it kind of like you in regards to like I want to take a bunch of photos and videos. I want to document these things.
Yes.
I found him as I've gotten older. I take a whole lot more photos. Looking at all the photos that I took, because I save my phones and I use them kind of as storage devices, which maybe isn't the safest thing. But I look at my Pixel 6.
That's probably pretty safe.
And I look at my S7 Edge and my 5S, or is it? Yeah, it's a 5S. And then I don't think I can find my flip phones anymore, or at least those are pretty much dead. But even
so, probably don't have much on them anyway.
I compare how much I took on those compared to this, and this is easily like quadrupled in the frequency of photos I take. And I think it's it's amazing how smartphones have gone from just being like the communication device to the all-encompassing camera that also just so happens to text people or call people as well.
Right.
And I can't wait to see what the 14 contributes to the iPhone line, whether it's an S year in a way or not. Whatever. I'm not really paying attention to the leaks as much. But
well, there's not much, to be honest. I was going to say I can wait. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll wait till it's ready.
I think maybe that baffles me is that you're adamant on not upgrading, like switching from the 13 Pro Max to a 14 Pro Max and staying with the 14 Pro Max. Instead, you're like, I'll try it out and then I'll give it back. Meanwhile, you're also like, I'm going to go 20 feet down below the water surface. Shove it into the sand for a bit and then throw it onto the rocks and it's fine.
Hardcore long-term ownership experience of the iPhone. Like, I don't want to baby it and just say, oh, it had an easy life. I want to own it for 2 or 3 generations and be able to say, no, I put this thing through its paces, especially on this trip when you're using GPS and you're using the camera a lot. I was killing it in a day, which I normally don't. Just because of my lifestyle. When I'm working, I'm usually on my laptop, and my laptop has power, and I can text people and I can call people from here, so I don't really need the phone around that much. So I don't actually, I was just looking for it. I don't know where my phone is. It's probably in the other room. But
it's living its own life.
It's doing its own thing. But on this trip, oh my God, I tweeted about it because I was thinking about, like, it's kind of insane how much uses our phones have, because this was my boarding pass for flights. This was my card. I was paying for things with my phone with Apple Pay. And this had, of course, all of our communications, letting people know where we are, when can we meet up, and, where should we meet you guys? Or, we were calling people, texting people, and using it for nav, finding out where places are, and also documenting everything with the camera and photos and videos. And I was checking email with this, and I'm doing banking with this. This is how I interact with my bank, is through my phone, and updating spreadsheets and stuff. I was like, oh, something I did that no one even talked about. I didn't see a single comment bring it up. All of the videos I made on the trip were shot on iPhone. I never tweeted about it. I never mentioned it. It was just like...
That makes sense, right? You're not bringing your big old camera system, right? When you're...
No. Well, I didn't in Puerto Rico, and no one seemed to care. I did bring my microphone because that's one section that I think the iPhone lacks still quite a bit. And also, I
Oh,
didn't know what the. I had never been to the place
this
we were
compared
staying
to
at.
this, there's a big major difference.
Oh, yeah. There's a physics difference. I mean, honestly, the iPhone mic is pretty impressive for
Right.
how small it is.
It's crazy.
But the, the difference is usually when I'm filming, I'm not that close to it. I think the iPhone mic sounds pretty good at a handheld distance, but I was filming like from the waist up, and where we were, it was pretty echoey. I listened to it just to make sure. I was like, maybe the iPhone mic sounds okay, and I listened. It was very bad. It was very reverb and echoey, and the Zoom mic I have is like a shotgun mic. It's very directional, so it captures basically what's right in front of it and not much else. And that I still take with me because it's pretty small, and I think people notice bad audio more than bad video. So still recorded all those videos off the iPhone and airdropped them to the Mac and edited and everything, and I didn't see anyone complain. Everyone was just like, huh, oh, he's in a different setup today. He's on a couch instead of his normal background. Like, no one said anything. So
This is the worst green screen ever.
right. It's like, you should go back to the other green screen background. So I'm grateful that it's so easy, but I also feel like quite a reckless, dangerous iPhone user because, I'm putting the dev betas, iOS 16 beta 1, I put on my main device, and then I go swimming in salt water with this phone that's like everything. It's my wallet, it's my navigation, it's my camera, it's literally my tool for work. I need that. And yet I'm like, woohoo, let's sea turtles, look at it. Chuck it over there. And there's no case. There's no screen protector
Yeah,
or anything.
that's what surprises me most because I guess I've gotten more clumsy with age, even though I'm only like 27 or whatever.
You're so much older than me.
I know. I'm finding that I'm dropping my phone a whole lot more, like enough to where like there's a little scratch up here, and
Yeah.
there's so many more scratches and dents on the screen protector that I've got that weren't there like a year ago.
Yeah.
Definitely weren't there a year prior to that. And I don't know. This year is the year of me dropping my phone, so I'm in shock and awe that you're able to do all this stuff with your 13 Pro Max, and there's not too much writing, or not writing on it, but there's not too much not recompense. I guess you're not seeing retaliation. I cannot think of the word.
Oh. Consequence?
Consequence is the word. Thank you.
That's
yes.
it.
Yeah.
There's not much of a downside to abusing it like I am, thankfully.
No, you're
It's
able
still,
to
I check
get
it
past
every
pretty
day.
well, versus me trying to baby this thing as much as possible, and instead it's just just tossing it everywhere.
I'll probably start babying my phone once it gets older. I'm worried that I'm going to have like some of the just generic. I talk to people that just kind of have generic iPhone problems after a couple of years of just like, what were yours was randomly shutting down even though the battery wasn't low.
So one thing that it does now is it just freezes.
So the touchscreen becomes unresponsive.
Yeah, like I'll go onto Google Maps or something like that, and then I try swiping, nothing. I try swiping up to go home, nothing. I try turning off the screen, nothing. It doesn't respond to any input for like.
See, that scares me. If it starts doing that kind of stuff, I'm worried that I'm gonna upgrade my iPhone, not this year, obviously, but 15 or 16. I'm gonna have to upgrade just for the sake of my old phone doesn't work reliably enough to live with, and I can't get by with it. I'm worried that Apple won't have to come up with reasons for me to upgrade. They'll just be like, yeah, your old phone sucks, you need a new one. I don't want to upgrade for that. In fact, if that happens, I'd almost rather just get a certified refurbished 13 Pro Max and be like, okay, this one's pretty new, and they update the cosmetic parts and they update the battery, and it'll feel new-ish, and I won't have to spend as much money because I do really like the design and the battery life and the display, and the cameras are all great, and I'm just convinced that for what Apple comes up with for the next couple of years, it's not really going to be enough to convince me it's worth upgrading to anymore. And I hope they prove me wrong, but eye hole's not doing it. I hope to leapfrog the eye hole. I'm not impressed with that design, and I think it looks weird. And nothing else about the phone. I'm sure I'll get used to it. I'm sure anyone would get used to it. It's not like a deal breaker. It's just, what does it offer that my current phone can't do? I can't think of much. So
yeah, other
if
features
they-
will probably fill in those spaces. But it's also made me think as well, with so many people saying the 14 is basically an S year. I'm like, so do I go for the 13 mini then? Because I'm already getting by with very poor battery life. I'm probably on par with iPhone 12 or 13 mini battery life.
You probably are.
Like,
Yeah.
I could probably just upgrade to that, skip 14, maybe even skip 15 if I wanted to, and go to 16, and still be fine. But I don't know.
I think every year is an S year now. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's why S's
every
haven't been seen
year's-
in a while, because we'd be stuck on 10S, 10R, 10S,
Oh yeah.
SR, the SSR.
Yeah. No, after the iPhone 11, I think they proved, or no, after the iPhone 12, they proved they're not doing S years anymore.
Yeah.
Because there was no 11S, and now there was no 12S. So they've kind of just proved we're just doing numbers from here on out until they think of something better. But the upgrades every year now are so incremental, which is not their fault. It's just that the smartphone's matured, and everything it can do, they've basically taken it to the max with, and now it's just iteration upon iteration. It'll be bigger camera bump this year, and probably even bigger one next year. I think probably the biggest change that I would be interested in is Thunderbolt at this point, like USB-C, which sounds like the EU is really pushing for now. Just because I feel like there's so many selling points you can push with that, of like faster data transfer speeds, faster charging, or if they do a Samsung DeX style feature, because by the time they switch to USB-C or maybe eventually Thunderbolt on the iPhone, the A series of chips will probably start to match or outperform the M1 or M2 chip. It'll take a while. It won't happen overnight, but they'll continue to upgrade, and I think there's a chance that you may be able to power a Mac off of a A series chip in the future. So if you could just dock your phone to an external monitor and wireless keyboard and mouse, like, I like that idea of just the iPhone becomes like the webcam, and it's the whole computer, and you just, as long as you give it power, it can handle all of that, and then you connect your accessories via Bluetooth, and that way I can take my editing Mac with me 20 feet deep in salt water everywhere I go.
That sounds like the most riskiest thing, because then that's everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I get the idea of like, what's the next evolution after the phone that is as competitive as the phone in being able to do so many different things. You could get on a flight with it. You can take amazing photos with it, but like the amount of reliance that you have on that machine, and it could be gone in a flash. Someone could break it in half easily, or the
Get stolen.
The sand grains get so ingrained into the body of the phone to where it short circuits something because it's connecting two things that weren't supposed to be connected, and it just doesn't operate anymore, or something else. Or it gets stolen, or it flies out of your pocket while you're climbing or on a walk somewhere where it's treacherous.
Your whole life.
Yeah.
Gone.
It all is gone because you accidentally stepped the wrong way and it fell out of your pocket because you have this giant brick in your pocket.
Right.
That's a worrying thing to me. Am I going to still get something like that where it's all in one, basically? Yeah, that sounds very convenient and very great. But that risk in which, I guess some people could say we'll just upload everything to the cloud. But you, Drew, know that that's not a good idea, especially in the cases where...
It's expensive, for one, and as I've discovered from traveling, you don't always have adequate internet wherever you go. You can't always have Starlink or...
Sometimes things just don't come off of the cloud.
5G.
There's no way to get it off, and there's no way Apple knows how to get it off. So...
Oh, true.
It's just not...
Still haven't fixed that.
No, it's just not a reliable thing. So you're kind of stuck with physical storage and physical
I
storage.
have been
can be lost.
hijacking a lot of cloud services, though. I've been backing up to Degoo, and someone told me about TeraBox, which is pretty sweet. They're free, but they give you a lot more space than Apple does. So I was like, well, these guys probably aren't very trustworthy because of how cheap the service is and how much storage they give you. So I'll just back up to like several. That way, if any of them loses my stuff, I'll still have a backup.
Almost
I have
having
multiple cloud backups,
Yeah.
as long as they don't cost me anything.
I've got I've got 2 SSDs hiding behind the iMac, which both have the same thing on them. It's just in case one of them gets corrupted. There's
There you
another
go.
one. And it's the same. I think you've got the same mindset, but digital. You've got all the
Yeah.
same information, but it's just on 2 different services. And yeah, let's just say Degoo goes under, and somehow legally or whatever, they're able to delete everything off of their servers, and all your data's gone. At least you've got the other one. Totally forgot the name of
TeraBox.
TeraBox.
Yeah.
At least you
I
have
just
TeraBox.
found out about them. I don't like always mentioning it because it sounds like a sponsored thing, and they're not sponsored. And the service, honestly, the ads are really annoying, and I can totally get why someone would not want to use them. However, if you're putting up with all the crap and all the ads, it's a terabyte of cloud storage for free. So I'm like, serious? And they have like a automatic photo backup thing. So when I was at the airport, I did a speed test, and it was like over 200 megabits up, and I was like, ooh, maybe now's a good time to try TeraBox. And they support the sign in with Apple
Oh,
thing.
wow.
So it supports the privacy, your data is protected. I don't know how protected it is, but
Yeah.
I
Third
talked
party with
about
a bunch
before,
of
I don't
ads.
really care. I'm not trying to back up personal private pictures or anything. It's like vacation pictures and pictures of me and my wife at the beach and hanging out with friends and like food and
The Talos of
it's-
OnlyFans is on a different, separate hardware device at home.
we have a whole different server for that. But no, I'm kidding. But the family pictures and stuff, I'm like, yeah, some NSA guy could look over that. I don't care. Go ahead, have fun. I just want it to be backed up so that when we want to take a trip down memory lane, we can. And that's part of the reason I like doing travel vlogs, is like YouTube is this very cheap, reliable cloud service where you can back up 4K, 8K video at 60 frames a second, and they'll keep it up there forever. So if other people want to watch the vlogs, even better, enjoy. You can watch them yourself, but part of the reason I make them is for us, so that it's great when we're at family's house and we're telling them about a trip or where we went. I can just look up Talos of Talks and I just pull up the vlog and show it to people, and we watch it. I don't have to bring my laptop over. There's still so many old people. I'm sorry, that sounds mean, but
I hate all these old people. They're everywhere. Why don't
Jimmy
they just
Carter is
die?
no.
Hillary Clinton
it's-
is X years old. I'm not even considering how old she is.
They're great people with great stories and great experience, but I'm so annoyed by how many older generations love keeping all of their pictures and videos on laptops and pulling out the laptops to show you all the pictures. It's like,
What's
just
the password?
put it on the exactly, and then they forget where they are, and the laptops break, and then they ask me how to get them all off, and they want to put them on. Oh my gosh, I was talking to someone the other day. They were like, we have all these recordings on cassette tapes,
Oh no!
and we don't have a cassette player. They're like, we don't have a cassette player to listen to them. So is there a way you can help us convert all of the cassette recordings onto a DVD? And I was like, no, don't put it onto another physical media. It's like,
Can we
because
just do
no one's going to have a
cassette to
DVD
YouTube?
player in another couple of years.
Does YouTube support cassette to YouTube?
I said your best bet is to just pull out your iPhone, set it to like the lowest resolution, like 720p at 30 FPS, and just record a video of the cassettes playing and post that on YouTube, because then you don't have to worry about like a DVD player being available. And DVDs suck. Oh my God. I cannot rant enough on DVD. They go bad so easily. They scratch super easily. The quality's terrible. The resolution is maxed out at like 480p, and people lose them and DVD players break, and I'm so sick of DVDs. Like,
Digital
I get
media
that people like having
is definitely the
physical
best
media
revolution to this
around,
data storage debacle. I mean, you could
but
maybe like the middle ground is, I don't think this is even legal. No, it's not even legal. I was gonna say take the movie from the DVD and put it on a hard drive.
people do. I have lots of
can't
friends
do
that do that.
You shouldn't be able, or
It's not
you're not
legal,
supposed to.
but it's not. What's it called? You don't get punished for it very much, so there's not much of a consequence to doing it, but it's still not. No, I have friends. I don't do it myself, but I have friends that basically buy up as many Blu-rays as they can. Blu-ray's probably the best form of physical media because you at least can get high res, and I get it for games and stuff. People like having the physical version of games and stuff. I get, but just when people are trying to preserve their memories of like old recordings and stuff, and they're trying to convert them over, I'm like, stop, no. I was like, don't do that. Don't put anything on any kind of physical medium that's going to become dated in 2 years. They may as well
they
ask
don't know that.
How do I get this on VHS?
We're going to go from cassette to VHS to CD to Blu-ray. I don't know why they'd go from CD or DVD to Blu-ray, but we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And
I just tell people, like, the first YouTube video that was ever uploaded is still there.
Yeah.
It was October of 2005. It's called I think it's called Me at the Zoo or something. Mm-hmm. And you can still watch it. That's how long lasting this format is. And Google's not going away anytime soon. So just, if you want something to last, like I put family videos on YouTube and I'll leave them private, just use it as a cloud hosting thing. I don't want people to see that. People can see it. iCloud uses Google servers anyway.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
Assume people can see that stuff.
It's something that I'll probably do soon. There's, like I said before, there's some time coming up where I'll have some free available time. I'll have the allocation of time ready to port a lot of this stuff, in which I'll probably go all the way back to the 5S, in which...
Wow.
Did I write down... I don't think I wrote down the passcode to that, in which...
Oops.
It took me forever to figure out the passcode. You know what?
You hold on to your stuff a bit longer. I don't. Usually, every phone, when I'm done with it, either gets sold or given to my wife or, something. It ends up somewhere else, and I got to factory reset it.
My goal is to
keep them.
I plan on having kids eventually, and if not, then maybe we'll adopt or something. But I plan on eventually, at the end of my life, looking at this progression of technology that I had, even if I don't have the same computer I had when I was a kid. That thing is long gone and probably some junkyard somewhere. But I've got its spiritual successor that I'm talking on right now. So that's a nice reminder. I don't know if I'll keep this forever. Computers are different.
Actually, the first iMac I ever bought, we do have in a storage shed, and last time I was there was about a year ago, but it had the power cable, so I plugged it into the wall and fired it up. It still worked.
Yeah, but at least
very slow.
Phones are at least small enough or compact enough to where I can easily put it in a drawer and take it wherever, if we move and all that. It's not a huge detriment, and it'll still probably power up. I just need to make sure I've got the power cable. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Yeah. I still have that physical media to show either myself in the future, or remind myself in the future, or show my offspring in the future. This is what I use to talk to people.
Right.
Like this,
that will be kind of cool.
I took a lot of videos on this thing. Yeah, maybe it doesn't work anymore, but this is what the form factor was and like what we worked with. And yeah, you might laugh at it and say that's hilarious. Why would you deal with that? Well, this was cutting edge technology at the time. Especially comparing the camera on this to the 5S that I've got. I'm like, phones have changed drastically in size and focus. Oh, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see in the future what that comparison is with, what you've got right now, the 13 Pro Max that can do so much stuff. It can be your webcam. It can do all this other stuff. And yet it will be a laughing stock probably in the next 10 years. People will be like, this is silly.
You're right.
Why would you do this? And the answer is, well, that's how society was at the time, and it was a really good product. But
Mm-hmm.
Now there's even cooler things. But yeah, was it getting back to it? I'll probably go back to the old 5S and the S7 Edge and the Pixel 2 XL.
I do have old phones. They just weren't mine, I guess. I guess I have a box full of just phones that people have given me over the years because they say that they don't need them or want them anymore. I have like 3 iPhone 4s. I have an original iPhone, an original iPad. I think the iPad Mini 1, and an iPad 2. I just have a box full of old tech. I should put my iPad in there. That way I could say I have my first and last iPad in there.
I'm not too sure if it'll be you'll probably buy and return iPads in the future, but it could be your list. Yeah. But
that doesn't count.
I wouldn't write it off though. I would say you probably will buy another iPad eventually and keep it, but I don't think. I don't know. I wouldn't throw that out as a possibility that will never happen. But
I wouldn't say it's impossible. I'm just saying the likelihood feels less every year when iPad OS is so minor. Like, I'm now convinced at this point, because my iPhone, like you said, is so big anyway. I watched a ton of YouTube and used that as a media consumption device on this trip, and I didn't really feel like this screen is too small. You know, now that it has picture-in-picture and you can watch stuff as you're... It's just so easy to swipe between apps, just with the bar at the bottom. I just Twitter, Discord, messages, mail. They just go back and forth. I don't really miss the split screen on the iPad that much. So
no.
I'm like, if I buy another iPad again, it's going to be because it's going to replace my Mac. Yep. It's going to be because they found a way to beef up the performance and beat out the M1 Max and give it, a big display and all the software that Mac OS is capable of utilizing. And so I've said that on the record. I've been like, I won't buy an iPad again until it can replace this. And people are like, I don't think that'll ever happen. And I'm like, I know.
There you go.
That's my point.
You just answered it.
Yeah. Maybe it will. It's possible they might listen. I wanted the iPhone as a webcam thing for years. And I wanted a USB-C for years. And for a long time, it sounded like that was impossible. Everyone kept saying, no, they're going portless. Apple will never do USB-C on the iPhone. And now, based on the rumors in the EU, it's sounding pretty likely. It's like, at this point, I don't think they legally can do portless, So there's a lot of things that I asked for years, and they eventually caved and did it. So maybe it's just not the iPad's time yet. I have this theory that maybe they're letting the Macs shine right now so that we all buy $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 Macs. And then once the Apple Silicon transition is complete and that turns into boring iterative upgrades where it's just like M2 chip, M3 chip, wow, I'm a little faster now. Because, there's only so many different ways you can redesign a chassis. They just redesigned the high-end Pros, the real Pros, and the Air. And then that 13-inch Pro is like the SE. It's the recycled design from 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's just hanging around for production efficiency. So they go a little bit faster now. They get a little bit better display quality. The bezels, maybe the notch gets a little bit small. It's all going to turn into iteration again. And maybe when the Mac line is all converted and all boring, that's when they'll say, okay, let's take the iPad to the next level. That way everyone goes out and buys $6,000 iPads because they'll have the software and the hardware to justify it. They'll have the Pro apps. They'll have the external webcam and external mic support and real desktop use cases. There's a chance of that happening, and maybe Apple's just taking their time with it, but I won't count on it. I won't guarantee it.
They make enough money. They got enough time to burn.
True.
I won't be surprised if they just went for a new, different chassis design that isn't what we're looking at now. That somehow makes sense. I don't know. They go for an Apple-shaped iPad. I don't know. Something weird. But usually... Even
so, even if they did everything I wanted with the iPad, the MacBook would still have the bigger battery. It would have the better ports. So that...
Sure.
It would be kind of a hard thing to justify, but
I would say as a final thought, you do make pretty good predictions like you made note of before. And
sometimes
I wanted to highlight, I highlighted this on the Discord but
Oh,
it was
okay.
before the event that you made the prediction of the M2 having a 15 to 20% increase.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, that's pretty safe guess.
yeah, and it turned out, it turned out on that event or whatever graph it was like an 18% increase. So you were within the bounds. And
I'm in that margin. It's pretty safe guess. I mean, they said it's a 8-core. M1 has an 8-core GPU. M2 has a 10-core GPU. That's 2 cores of 8 is like 20%. So it doesn't scale perfectly linearly. So I was just like, yeah, probably marginal improvement, which is not amazing, but you know, that's what I think the future of this transition is going to be. We're still in kind of the prime time. You know, the Mac Pro is the big kahuna. That's what everyone's excited for and eager to see how crazy it'll get. It'll probably be a disappointment because M1 Ultra was kind of a disappointment, and maybe Apple's struggling to get the 3 nanometer chip fabrication together so that they can actually have a meaningful Mac Pro. But once that's done, I think we're going to have similar designs and iterative, slightly faster, slightly faster, slightly faster, and same thing kind of with iPhones, which is why we're diving into more subjects. That's why I like talking about Starlink or cellular plans or cloud storage options. Or
we didn't even cover the
EV.
new changes with Starlink and everything else. But
what happened? What changed?
What changed with Starlink? Well, they're gone now. No, quite the opposite.
Oh, that's right.
Actually, today, was it today or last night? Starlink got approved to be on moving vehicles now. So you can have them on boats, you can have them on trucks, you can have them on planes.
Oh, that's cool.
The government or whatever regulation body deemed it good, or I guess not good, but they deemed it acceptable for Starlink to be activated while in motion. I don't know if you can do that in a car in the U.S.
Probably can.
I know you can do it in some portions of the world, but at least, here, not yet. But that's the thing now, Starlink, along with, what was the other thing? I guess they unveiled a pretty cool backpack that you can store it in. What was that? Dish is, of course, trying to shut down Starlink because Dish being the 30 to however old company they are, who made no strides in improving their service substantially, in my opinion, is now seeing the
12 gigahertz spectrum.
Yeah, something like that they want to do, and they're trying to convince the government to back them, where Starlink is like, this is competition. You guys sat on your butt and did nothing, so we came in and decided to make a profit and do something. So
now they're trying to ban their competitors, which is stupid and unfair. Hopefully they don't get away with that.
Very slimy move by Dish.
This show would not be happening if it weren't for Starlink.
Yeah,
that's how me and Mike are talking.
I wouldn't be here, and sure, a lot of I guess you'd still be on Comcast or whatever, but a lot of shows in the past you wouldn't have been on.
Oh yeah,
maybe. But I guess my point is, if you like Starlink or if you're a fan of Starlink, definitely. I think Drew's retweeted on the Taylors of Tech.
There's a link handle. You can click that'll has kind of a pre-formulated message to express why.
Yeah, you don't even have to write anything. All you have to do is put in your name as, yes, I am this person, and I think Dish shouldn't be able to do this in trying to lobby the government to support them in regards to disabling this critical frequency, or not disabling, but basically providing a whole bunch of interruptions on this frequency that Starlink uses. If that happens, I probably won't really be on the show that much because I won't have a good connection. So if you want to hear more of me, please sign.
I mean, I have other options where I live, but I know a ton of people that do not, and Starlink is literally their only choice. Yeah, and it's going to improve flights. I heard Hawaiian Airlines actually announced that they're going to support Starlink on their flights next year. So I was hopeful that I would get it on my flight, but no, I didn't.
No, it's only on a few
didn't have Wi-Fi at all.
Interesting. On my flight, they didn't have food, which made me
Oh,
very disappointed too.
jeez. They did have food, but on the all the Alaskan and United and everybody else I flew on had some kind of limited on flight Wi-Fi, but Hawaiian had nothing. I was kind of surprised by that. So I'm glad they're going to get Starlink, and I think one of the nice things SpaceX did was they said if an airline uses Starlink, it has to be reasonably priced or something. I don't know if it's free, but
well, yeah, there's was it the Royal Caribbean? One of their boats switched over to Starlink to test its capability, and some guy, I guess some. Excuse me for being sexist. Nicole Feast checked it out with their partner on this Royal Caribbean cruise, and they've been on a few cruises before, and they said that this was a major upgrade. And so
I bet.
There's a whole...
They had like nothing before.
Yeah, there's a whole article on it, and they said it was great, and basically they just priced it at the same structure as what the previous system was that they had for premium Wi-Fi connectivity and all that.
Okay.
So I would say it's probably either going to come at the same price as what they already offer for flights and all that for in-flight Wi-Fi.
You'll just get better internet now.
Yeah. Or they take advantage of it being better internet and they make it a little bit more costlier. But
see, I thought there was something in the contract that said they couldn't do that. I'll have to go find the tweet, but there was something about like they don't want people being price gouged for Starlink or something. But the boat situation with cruise ships makes so much sense because we have all these satellites already there, and they're not geo synced, they're moving, but over these great spans of ocean, you don't have very many users at all.
No.
We have limited availability in these cells on land because there's so many people living here, but out in the ocean, that one cruise ship could be the only boat in the cell. So
it gets everything.
You just cover that with Dishy McFlatfaces, which was cool. The picture of the article with like 10 dishies in a row or whatever. There was a bunch.
There's about I think 5 or 6 in the photo that they included, but yeah, something like that.
You have a bunch out there, and you can utilize essentially like all of the band, not all, but a ton of the bandwidth that the satellite in that cell is providing. So, way faster internet on cruise ships and planes. Honestly, I don't think there's a larger internet provider. Comcast is regional. It's not global. There's big internet providers like AT&T, Fiber, and Comcast and Spectrum and stuff, but they're all mostly country specific. They're available in certain regions, whereas Starlink gets to say like, all boats, all planes, and
some moving vehicles.
Some moving vehicles, and every country they can legally launch it, they will. And probably even in some countries where it's not legal, they'll smuggle them in and use them anyway. Yeah.
But it's a great service. And having another company come and be like, that's not fair, isn't really the whole truth. And in fact, in a government, or I guess not government, in a country that we live in that's very much built on competition. This is very much what the nature of it is. This is all about competition. If you can't compete, then either you have to find some other way to survive or you die out. And you kind of have to come to terms with that. You can't have mommy come in and say, that's not fair, Timmy. You need to be nicer to your brother. That's not going to help.
That's what
anybody.
The dealers did.
Yeah. So I think a better idea for Dish is to actually get their butts in motion and actually build out their service. And now it's going to be tougher because there's a whole lot more Starlink satellites above us than there are any other satellites.
This is why I think Starlink could become a monopoly very easily.
Exactly. So maybe some partnership with Starlink would be a better bet for Dish.
Maybe. I hate to say it, but they might be in one of those shoes where I'm like, I don't know how they can survive this.
They whine to the government. That's their solution.
It's annoying that they do that, and it's dumb that there's even a chance of that happening, but I sort of get it because that's probably much cheaper than trying to create a competing satellite network, which they have almost zero chance of doing. because they can't build rockets that land themselves, and they can't afford to do all that. If they did want to compete, they would have to use SpaceX rockets. So they have positioned themselves in this really, really competitive service where you can't really beat them at this point. Amazon tried to do the same thing with Project Kepler. They were trying to shut down Starlink, even though they didn't offer a service. So monopolies are bad, but this one's doing a lot of good.
This one has a lot of good attached to it, and it comes at a pretty decent price tag, and I know it because I pay it. And
especially in Ukraine.
Yes.
And how useful Starlink has been there. It's like, I'm glad it exists, but hopefully it doesn't start to follow the bad trends of a monopoly, with
the Amazon approach where you've got,
yeah.
Yes, you can get your product in under 2 days, but it means there's more Amazon trucks on the road. They're clogging up the motorways, and you have more accidents because they're clogging up the motorways, and then people get angry, and those drivers...
Or just Amazon Web Services.
That as well. Or the amount of just you hitting the buy it now button contributes a whole lot of CO2 production, even though that you have a pixelated mouse or selector selecting a pixelated button that apparently has and it does have a very big impact.
It's a big infrastructure. Yeah,
so
it's true.
That is a detriment of monopolies, definitely. But with Starlink, I'm not really seeing it unless they start price gouging, but they've already stated for airlines and boats, we don't want that to happen. And so maybe you see that.
And there's enough alternatives in the internet space. There's fiber optics and there's 5G home internet like I'm using. And so it's not like they're going to become the sole internet provider, but no. There's a lot of regions where Starlink will be the only option. But in a similar way, Comcast and Spectrum are often the only option in a lot of places.
Sure. I think that's a great point to bring up, just because if any of y'all are subscribed to Talos of Gaming, I tried streaming on there with Starlink, and the quality was a little bit iffy at times. And by at times, I mean a good amount. I watched it back. But in terms of streaming the game, it was tough. But in terms of playing a game online with people, it does pretty much fine. There's not many issues. The only thing you have to keep in mind sometimes, and this was a while ago when I played an online game, every so often it would kind of stutter a little bit. So you'd kind of have to factor that in, like, oh, it's probably going to stutter in the next second or two. I better make sure I'm hidden behind cover instead of out in the middle of the battlefield with a machine gun ready to get sniped in the head and all that. But it's a good service. I don't think people give it enough credit for what it's doing for people out in the boonies in the middle of nowhere, or in a climate where there's a lot of uncertainty and violence, or you're like me, you're kind of near like fiber, but you're not close enough for fiber, and the only other options are very crappy, overpriced services that don't,
I'm there too.
that don't give you good coverage or good speeds.
I know where fiber is, but I'm not there.
Yeah, and I don't want to move into that location where there is fiber, because I lose a lot of things that I hold. I guess I'm losing a lot of the words I'm trying to say today, but things that I value a lot more where I'm at versus the place.
Moving is so expensive already. I mean, interest rates at an all-time high.
Exactly. But being able to move to the middle of nowhere with your same internet and not having to re-sign up with a different internet provider, or leave that internet provider where you're at and then join that internet provider again at a different location can also be a headache. So
here's hoping they get Starlink V2 satellites up, which I guess require the Starship rocket. It can't be done on the Falcon.
Our man on the ground that I just dusted is covering that. So hopefully, Nick, whenever you get unsnapped, take more pictures for us.
Yeah, I saw someone grabbed a shot of them loading the Starlink V2 satellites into the Ship 24, I believe. So
wow,
they're
actually
built.
Do it.
They're getting ready. We'll see, pending approval. But I think that the service does a lot of good, despite technically being a monopoly in many areas. But that's kind of inevitable with internet service providers because of how region-based they are.
Did you say inevitable?
Inevitable. Do you have any last words?
This garden glove has dispersed a whole bunch of garden shavings all over my seat, and I need to clean up.
Oh no.
But
Okay.
that is my
On
final
that note,
word. Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks, Mike, for joining. And
Anytime.
we'll catch you all in the next blip.
Bye.
Bye.